So the biggest questions I get are, aren't you cold? Or how do you heat your home? Just like anybody else heats their home, have a water source heat pump. Most of them are air cooled. You have your condensing unit outside and your evaporator unit inside. This one still has an evaporator unit, but on a boat generally you have a water source. It uses a pump and circulates water through the condenser, through the heat exchanger, and discharges the heat when it's in cooling and absorbs heat from the water during the heating process. So I've got a 1.5 ton, 16,000 BTU heat pump that will bring the temperature up in here to whatever I choose. On top of that, add in a little clip here of my Dixon propane heater. You can get solid fuel, you can get diesel. The problem with those is you have to have a fresh water or fresh air source, so you have to leave a window open, you have to leave a hatch open, something, because they use the air from the inside of the boat to burn the fuel, and then it exhausts out the chimney. The great thing about the Dixon propane heater, it's a double flume chimney, so on top it's got two bells. On top of the chimney, it pulls the fresh air through the bottom bell down through and burns that oxygen, and then goes out through the center pipe. So the outside pipe stays somewhat cooler. It still gets pretty hot, but not enough that it's going to burn anything. It gets cooler as it goes up as the air comes down into it. So you don't have to burn oxygen inside of the boat. You're not bringing cold air out in order to have your fire. So you can seal the boat up as tight as you want and use less heat, use less fuel, and keep the boat warmer and drier. I think you get like 110 hours on low, and low is about 4,000 BTU. Like I say, you're not bringing in the cold air from the outside. So even on low, it gets plenty warm. When it's below freezing outside, it does cycle. My heat pump will cycle a couple of times an hour, but not nearly like it would. Plus it's a drier heat, warmer heat, much more comfortable than the regular heat pump. Let's see what else. Space. I've got about 175 square feet inside on my 38-foot with a 12-foot beam, but it's more than comfortable for me. And when I have other people over, you realize the size, you realize that it's smaller. There are tours of the boat on here if you'd like to see. It's just really comfortable. I've got a queen size bed, I've got plenty of sitting area. The galley is as big as any boat this size. The forward head is great. There's more room. I've been on other boats and you got to pull a little shower curtain around you and you hardly have any room to move. You can fit 2 people in here if you want to, and there's just plenty of room in there. Power, of course, shore power like an RV. You just plug it into the outlet out here when you're at the dock. It's a 30 amp service. Most houses have, old houses had 100 amp service, and all the newer houses have 200 amp service. So if you think of a microwave, 1200 watt microwave, you divide that by 120, so it's 10 amps. You divide your watts by your volts, and then you get how many amps you're using. So 10 amps out of 100 or 200 amp service, you get to run a lot of microwaves. On here you get a 30 amp service, and you're really only supposed to use 80% of that. So a microwave sucks up a lot of juice. Hot water heater, I have a ISOtemp hot water heater, which only has a 700 watt heating element instead of the 11 or 1200 watt heating element that most of them have. So it uses a lot less electricity. It takes a little longer to heat it, but it's got really good insulation on it. And I rarely ever run out of hot water. 5.3 gallons, I believe it is. You just learn to take smaller showers, and you shut it off in between. But I sit up there and I waste a lot of water when I'm sitting at the dock. When you're on the hook or whatever, when you're anchored out or when you're sailing, you take a little shorter showers. I carry 100 gallons of water, which in the wintertime they shut the water off here. I fill up on the weekends, generally a Saturday or Sunday. Never run out of water. Other power, I have a battery charger, which just trickles when you're sitting here at the dock, so it's not as big of a deal. The air conditioner, the heat pump, The old one, I replaced an older Marine Air which pulled about 13.5 amps, which was more than half of my electrical capacity, to a newer one from Marinair out of Florida, and it pulls about 10 amps. It's a little bit less than that, and then there's the pump that actually moves the water. It's close to an amp by itself. So it's about 10.5 amps total, much more efficient. It's a better refrigerant. It's R134A instead of R12, so it's a much higher pressure, much more efficient. Get colder air coming out and warmer air during the wintertime. What else do we have? Well, that's it for the 120 unless I'm plugging something in. I've got a kettle I heat my coffee water with. I have one light bulb. Everything else, like this one up here, this is 12 volt. My refrigeration is 12 volt. The blower on the Dixon propane heater is 12 volt. In the wintertime, it's running over here in the background, I do run a dehumidifier, keep it about 45% in here. And even that, it still sweats. There's nothing you can do to stop the inside of a boat from sweating, especially when you're liveaboard. Your breath, your shower, your cooking, you're just constantly releasing all this moisture. It's raining today, so there's plenty of moisture just from the air moving. Even though I've got the boat still up pretty tight, you still get outside air here. You have to. What else do we have? My computer is 120. I've got, so with the battery charger, I've got a big inverter on here. So I could run the hot water heater, but it would suck the batteries down. And I have a pretty big house bank, but it would just suck all the juice out of the batteries probably before it would ever make one tank of hot water. But there's a heat exchanger on that, so when I run the main engine, if I'm motoring somewhere or if I want to charge the batteries off of that, which I normally don't do, when you're motoring, it makes 180 degree water and it will peel the skin off of you. So you have to be careful with marine hot water heaters. This one does have a balancing valve. It's a percentage, so you can crank it up a little bit when you're doing the 120. It produces about 150 degree water. So this mixing valve, you can set it to mix in a percentage of cold water back into it, but it's not thermostatically regulated. So you're still, when you go from 150 to 180, you're getting more hot water out. What else do we have? Say the dehumidifier is about 7 amps. I've got the generator. I've got a 4,000 watt generator, which is more than the 30 amps, so it'll run anything on the boat. So generally when I wake up first thing the following morning, I'm anchored out, I will crank up the generator for about 30 minutes, go ahead and charge up everything, go ahead and make my coffee, and go ahead and turn the hot water heater on. Might as well. It makes 4,000 watts regardless at 120 volts. Regardless of whether you're using it or not, the electricity is there. So you might as well use it. It's no more efficient to turn everything off and just try to charge a battery or just make coffee. Turn everything on that you want to have on. Sleeping, I've got almost a full queen size bed. This boat is a little different. It has a Pullman berth. I kind of think of a train with a bed off to one side, Pullman cars. So it's a queen size at one end, and it tapers down to queen size about 5 feet wide. It tapers down to about 3 feet. It starts about a third of the way down and tapers. Say I actually used my house mattress when I moved onto the boat, and it was all memory foam, so I just trimmed it down and redid the ticking, the material on it, and made a really, really nice, comfortable memory foam top with the topper, the padded topper. A really nice, comfortable bed. So I use queen sheets. I just have to pull them a little on the short end. As far as where I sit, there's an L-shaped settee right here, and my dining room table, which will fold up, and you pull it out and you make another queen berth here. But I don't ever have anybody over. I think this has been used one time since I've had the boat. Plus there's also a settee on the starboard side where my bicycle sits. So I don't have any room over there. If I get a lot of people over, I have to take that and push it forward or stick it in the head or put it out in the cockpit. Really don't spend much time down here when you're out. The cockpit is the biggest place. That's like your social place. You're tied up to other boats, and you're either sitting on somebody else's boat or you're sitting on your boat and just talking across from boat to boat. Refrigeration. My refrigerator is a chest style, like most boats of this era. They've got some now that open forward, but then every time you open it, the cold air comes out of the bottom. That's the purpose in the chest style refrigerator. It's got the lift up lids on it. It's big enough that I could get inside of it. So what I do, great trick somebody had suggested to me, if you get the box wine, like the 4-bottle style, you can, when you get done, you can fill it back up with water, and you can put it in the bottom of that, because I don't use the whole thing, so I'm sitting there trying to keep all this air cold, and it's better to have stuff in there, but I don't have a lot of stuff being single and living on the boat. I just pick up stuff every day or two on the way home from work. And what I did, I filled these bags up. I've got 3 of them in there. One of them right under my evaporator plates that's turned into a solid block of ice, which is great because when I do anchor out, I've got a big chunk of ice in there that helps keep everything cold. And the other 2 bags just kind of sit because it's square on 3 sides, and then one side is the hull, so it kind of curves up, and then these bags just kind of sit in there and they form fit, so they hold a lot of cold while I am at the dock. And like I said, when I go out, they can absorb the heat rather than my refrigeration system running. And that is the biggest electrical draw on the boat when you're not at the dock. It's about 5.5 amps when it runs, and it probably runs. It's not the best insulated in the world, so it probably runs 20 minutes out of the hour. Never timed it, but I do have a meter over there I can look over anytime and see what's running, and I know I keep up with all this stuff, so I know how much my refrigerator takes. I know how much all my little LED takes, you know, within reason. I know if it says 5.3 amps, the refrigerator's on, plus it's under the settee where I'm sitting. So you hear it all the time, you don't pay any attention, but if you stop and listen, you can tell what's running. All of my lights, except for my anchor light, are LED, so they pull milliamps rather than amps. I do have 2 fluorescent lights, one in the dressing area and then one in the head, that are fluorescent. Just, you don't use them that much, you don't leave them on. My LEDs in the galley are jewelry cabinet lighting. They're really too bright. I need to figure out how to put a dimmer on those. I don't know if I can just put a resistor in line. Someday I'll look into it, but they'll blind you. They're great, and they were cheap. eBay. Just tied them into a couple of switches up there. I'll do an update of some of the stuff I've done to the boat and show you those. But they're really bright, which is great when you're not like running down here from the dark and you're motoring or sailing at night. If you're just sitting, you know, they'll blind you, then you go back out and you can't see anything. If you're just sitting at the dock and you got lights on anyway, and you're sitting here watching TV and you go up there to cook, it's great illumination. Plus I have LED strips all over the boat. It's got like toe kicks, you know, like in the kitchen, up under the kitchen cabinets. They're all around the boat, and it originally they were actually tag lights out of a bumper. So this boat is an 85, so that was pretty creative back then. But I've gotten rid of those rusty old corroded things that most of them didn't work anyway, and put these little strip lights that you can get off of eBay straight from China for next to nothing. I have had to replace them one time. Some of them went out, so I ordered them at different times, so I guess I got from different manufacturers. Some of them went out, some of them flickered, and some of them, I still have one of them over here that I need to replace, but some of them stayed perfect, and then some of them kind of get yellowed, and some of the LEDs, the diodes, would start to go out. So what else do we have? Fans. I've got a couple of fans on here that are 12 volt. I've got one in the head and then one in the berth that I use every night. That's about it. I mean, I've got everything except a dishwasher, a washer, and a dryer that you would have in a normal house, with plenty of space. And when I feel like getting away from the world or going hang out with friends or taking a trip, I just unplug and I take the lines off and I go anywhere I want. It's a great life, and it takes more effort. You come home and there's something to do every day. You say, well, you know, houses are a lot of work too. It's different with a boat. The list is a lot longer than a house. I've lived and owned plenty of houses, and it's different with a boat. It is a lot of work. We just got back. What is today? Monday. We got back Saturday from a week-long sailing trip up and down the coast of Florida with a 1990 Island Packet 32, me and 2 friends of mine. And every day it was something. When you stopped, there was a couple of nights in a marina, a couple of nights on the hook, a couple of nights on mooring ball, Every night when you stopped, there was something to do. There was something to fix. A pump that stopped working, a winch that wasn't working right, a problem with a holding tank we won't get into. That was fun. Actually, we did that one under sail. Yeah, there's something every day that has to be worked on. But once you get it to a certain point, so I've had this boat almost 4 years. February will be 4 years, and I've gotten it to a point to where there's plenty of stuff that needs to be done, but not something that I have to do right now. So I can kind of pick and choose. Today I come home, I just want to get on the computer and have a drink and relax. And if I want to do something, there's no shortage of things to work on, things to fix. I need to make a physical list. I've got a nice long mental list of things I want to do and things I want to fix. But if you're thinking about it and you don't mind the responsibility of dealing with it, once the boat's paid for, all you have is your electric and your slip fees and the maintenance on the boat. And so once you get it up to a certain point, it's not so bad. I mean, I can live pretty cheap. I'm able to spend quite a bit of money and buy things like the real expensive battery charger and the $1,000 Dixon heater. I don't think it'll ever pay for itself, but it's a really nice, comfortable heat. And now, if I want to go anchor out in the wintertime, I just crank that up, and say that 20-pound tank of propane will last me, especially being at the dock, it'll last me probably 2.5, 3 months. So I have 2 tanks that I can swap out. So I can make it through the wintertime probably on 2 tanks, maybe 3. But I just take the tank up to town and get it refilled. $13 for 20 pounds. My stove is all propane. You wouldn't have electric stove on a sailboat. Power boats have electric stoves generally because you're running a generator all the time, but they just don't shut anything off. They're made for living indoors. Not much outside time. Sailing is more being out, being more kind of with the environment instead of just looking through your windows at it. Not knocking all power boaters. I know a lot of power boaters that used to be sailors. It's just too much work. They wanted to get somewhere faster. It was more about being out on the water than sailing is. Sailing is being more with it rather than on it. Personal preferences, though. So I thank you for watching this one, and if you like, everybody else, thumbs up there. Tell your friends, tell other liveaboards. If there's anything you want to know, anything you want to see, engines. Maybe I won't even talk about engines on a sailboat. That's the worst thing on here. Engines and pumps. You get rid of those, it'd be a perfect life. But I appreciate you watching. Thanks.